Fake comparisons. What if the choices you think you're making aren't really yours at all? It starts like this. You're given a decision, a choice between two options. They look fine, almost identical, but one of them, well, it doesn't quite sit right. It feels off, like it's too good to be true. It promises everything, but something about it seems just a little too perfect. And then before you know it, you're picking it. The option that didn't quite feel right. The one that wasn't really the best option for you. And you're left wondering, why did I go for that? Welcome to the world of manipulation. One of the most powerful techniques, fake comparisons. It's a sneaky way to make one option seem like the only reasonable choice, by comparing it to something so unrealistic that you're almost forced to pick it. Let's dive into how this works. Imagine you're shopping for a car. You see two models. The first one is reliable, affordable, and perfect for everyday use. The second one, it's a high-end luxury sports car. It's faster, shinier, and has all the bells and whistles. At first glance, it seems like a no-brainer. The luxury car is the obvious winner. But here's the trick. There's a third option, hidden from view. The third option, it's a tank, literally, a giant military vehicle, with no regard for comfort, practicality, or even basic functionality. Suddenly the luxury car doesn't look so bad anymore. It seems like a sensible choice, even though it's far beyond what you actually need. Why? Because the tank comparison makes everything else feel tame in comparison. This is a fake comparison. You didn't actually need to choose between the luxury car and the tank. But now, your mind is tricked into thinking the fancy car is your best option. It's brilliant, but subtle, and it's everywhere. The world of advertising loves using this trick. Let's say you're browsing for a new phone. You see one that's advertised as the best in its class. The marketing campaign paints it as a revolutionary product, a must-have, but then you notice the price. It's through the roof. Right next to it is a phone with a more reasonable price tag. It's still a solid phone, just not quite as sleek or packed with features as the first one. But here's where the fake comparison comes in. Right next to the expensive phone, there's one with an even higher price tag. It's filled with every feature imaginable, including some that you'll never need. And now, the original phone suddenly looks like a bargain, even though it might still be overpriced for what it offers. The only reason it looks affordable now is because it was compared to the most extreme option available. This technique doesn't just stop in the shopping world. It's used in arguments too. Let's say you're discussing a political issue, and someone presents you with two choices. The first is a perfectly reasonable, moderate approach. The second is a radical, extreme alternative. They tell you, well, we can either go with the moderate plan, or the extreme one will happen. They don't say it directly, but the message is clear. You have to pick the moderate option, because the extreme one is too crazy to even consider. But what if there was another, even more balanced solution, one that's neither extreme nor overly moderate? You won't even think to look for it, because the radical option is so extreme that it makes the moderate plan seem like the obvious, safe choice. This is a fake comparison at its core. The radical option has been set up as the other side, leaving the moderate option as the reasonable choice by default. It's the same trick that's used in corporate settings. Think about a company that offers two packages. One is highly overpriced, filled with unnecessary add-ons that you don't need. The other is cheaper but still contains some value. And then suddenly there's a third package, a ridiculously expensive one that offers everything and more. But it's clearly not meant for the average person. Now, the second package looks like a steal. It's nowhere near as expensive as the third, and it's definitely better than the first. But the truth is, you didn't even need the second package. In fact, the first one would have worked just fine. This kind of manipulation works because the brain is hardwired to make comparisons. When we're faced with choices, we naturally compare them, but when one option is presented as a near impossible extreme, we instinctively gravitate toward the more sensible one, even if that option is still way beyond what we truly need. So, why does this trick work so well? It's all about perspective. When we're comparing one thing to another, we're not always comparing the right things. We get stuck in what's available, and we stop asking if we really need anything at all. Imagine a friend shows you a stunning dress they've bought. It's beautiful, expensive, and perfect for a special occasion, but then they tell you it was either this one or a much fancier one, with diamonds on the sleeves. Now, the first dress suddenly seems like a deal. It's not the most expensive one out there, and it's perfect for what you need. But here's the kicker. The second dress wasn't even a real option. It was just used to make the first one seem more reasonable. That's the power of fake comparisons. This tactic is so ingrained in our world that we barely notice it. We've come to expect it. We see it in movies when characters are given two choices, one reasonable, one over the top, but both designed to make the first seem like the clear winner. We hear it in advertisements when companies present their product as a better deal compared to a luxury alternative. But here's the thing. You don't always have to play along. You can start by recognizing when fake comparisons are being made. When you feel like you're being pushed into a corner with two choices, ask yourself, is there another option? Is there a middle ground? Is there something you can choose that isn't just the lesser of two extremes? By stepping back, you regain control. You stop reacting to the comparison and start making choices based on what you truly need. So next time you're faced with a decision that seems too easy, too obvious, remember it's not always about the options laid out in front of you. Sometimes the trick is in the choices you weren't shown. And once you see through the illusion, you'll realize that your power lies not in the comparisons, but in your ability to choose what's right for you. And that's the true freedom. Creating dependency. What if you could control someone's entire life without them even knowing it? The first key. There's a moment of subtle influence. It's not loud. It's not forceful. Just a quiet nudge. You start small, planting little seeds, watching them grow. At first it feels like nothing at all. A simple gesture, a kind word, or an offer of help. You're not demanding anything, but slowly, over time, you're there, always there. The trap. It's not obvious, not at first. You step into their life, offer comfort, and maybe even make them feel special. You give them what they need, at just the right time, so that they begin to rely on you. But here's the thing. It's not about love or friendship. It's about control. It's about making them feel like they can't function without you. They think they're choosing you. They think they're leaning on you because they want to. But the reality is, you're building the foundation for something much darker. You're creating a dependency. You see, dependency doesn't appear overnight. It's a slow burn. It's a process that unfolds in the quiet moments. At first, they turn to you because they trust you. Maybe you're the only one who listens. Maybe you're the only one who offers help when the world feels overwhelming. You've built your place in their life, and you did it with care. They start to come to you for advice, for comfort, for reassurance. But the moment they begin to rely on you, you gain power. They start to believe they can't make decisions without you. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's a mix of both. Whatever it is, the dependence grows stronger with each passing day. Here's the twist. It doesn't even feel like manipulation. It feels like you're just being there for them. And that's what makes it dangerous. You're not pushing them. You're not forcing them to depend on you. No, you're just being kind, being supportive. But somewhere along the way, it shifts. then they start to feel like they need you more than they need anything else. They'll begin to doubt themselves. They'll second-guess their decisions. They'll feel uncertain without you by their side. This isn't because they want to. They don't even know it's happening. It's because you've created an environment where they feel vulnerable without you. The dependency becomes their safety net, and you become their anchor. You might be wondering, how does this happen? How does someone go from feeling independent to being totally reliant on another person? The answer is simple. You slowly start filling a void. Everyone has a need for connection, for guidance, for security. At first, you meet those needs in small, seemingly harmless ways. You listen to them when no one else does. You step in when they need help, and before they know it, they've become so accustomed to your presence that they begin to feel incomplete without it. It's a masterful trick of the mind. You've conditioned them to associate their emotional well-being, their sense of stability, with you, and without even trying, you've placed yourself at the center of their life. You've made yourself irreplaceable. But that's the thing. No one wants to be replaceable, and once someone feels that way about you, the dependence deepens. Let's pause for a moment. Think about the last time someone made you feel like you couldn't live without their support. Did they do it subtly? Over time, maybe they helped you when you were struggling, and in the process made you feel like you couldn't do it without them. It's not a conscious choice. They don't say it directly. They just position themselves in your life in such a way that you start to rely on them without realizing it. Now, imagine this happening on a larger scale. Imagine they're not just there for a small problem. Imagine they're there for everything, from the big life decisions to the smallest moments of doubt. The more they're there, the more you begin to question, can I handle this without them? That's the beauty of manipulation through dependency. It's not about forcing someone to rely on you. It's about gently guiding them into the belief that they can't thrive without your presence. It's a slow, insidious process that feels completely natural, until one day they wake up and realize they can't remember the last time they made a decision on their own. This is where it gets really dark. Dependency doesn't just stop at emotional reliance. It crosses into financial territory too. You offer small favors, little loans, assistance that feels like it's out of kindness. But over time, those little things add up. They start to see you as their lifeline. Maybe you're the one who bails them out when they're in trouble. Maybe you lend them money, again and again. It's not that they're helpless. It's that you've made them believe they are. And once they're financially tied to you, once they owe you something, the dynamic shifts completely. It's no longer just about emotional support. It's a power play. You're no longer just a friend or a partner. You're a provider. And the moment you hold that role, you hold the power. You make them feel like they can't stand on their own 2 feet. You might think, this is wrong. This isn't how relationships should be. And you're right. But that's what makes manipulation through dependency so dangerous. Because it feels right. It feels loving. It feels like support. It doesn't feel like control. And that's exactly why it works so well. So how can someone break free from this kind of dependency? It's not easy. The first step is realizing it's happening. The second step is learning how to make decisions on your own, to trust your own instincts again. But even then, it's not enough to just cut ties. It's about rebuilding yourself, emotionally, financially, and mentally, so you can stand on your own. But for the person manipulating, the key is in the subtlety. You don't push someone into dependency. You coax them into it. You make them feel like they need you, like they can't function without you. You create a bond that's so strong, they can't see a life without it, and that bond becomes their prison. The reality is, creating dependency is a slow burn. It's about being patient. It's about offering just enough to make them feel secure, but never enough to let them break free. Because once they rely on you completely, they're yours. And that in the darkest sense is the manipulation. In the end, it's not about love. It's not about friendship. It's about control. And once you hold that control, once they depend on you for everything, they're not just in your life, they're caught in your web. Group pressure. What if your choices were never really yours to begin with? The first push. There's a moment when you feel it. It's subtle, almost undetectable. You're in a room with others. Maybe it's a gathering or a casual conversation. And at some point, something shifts. It's not an argument or a confrontation. It's something quieter, a soft pressure that weighs on you, like the weight of 1,000 eyes subtly guiding you, pulling you into a decision you didn't quite make. You might not even realize it's happening, that the group, the presence of others, starts to nudge you, gently or forcefully, in a particular direction. You feel it deep down. Something isn't right, but it's too late. The crowd has already started its work. That's group pressure. It's the invisible hand, pushing you to do what everyone else is doing, to think the same thoughts, to adopt the same beliefs, to follow the same steps, as if your individuality was never there in the first place. It's a trick of the mind, a very real force. You start to believe that your choices are your own, when they're actually a reflection of everyone else's, and no matter how much you want to resist, that pressure is there, like a magnet pulling you in. But why does this happen? Why is it so powerful? Let's stay with that for a moment. Imagine you're in a group setting. Friends, co-workers, strangers, it doesn't matter. The energy of the group starts to build. It's a shared atmosphere of unspoken influence, and suddenly you feel yourself slipping into a pattern. Maybe it's buying something everyone else is buying, to maybe it's laughing at a joke you wouldn't normally find funny. Maybe it's agreeing with something you don't fully understand. You've been there, right? The trick is this: humans are social creatures. From the moment we're born, we're wired to fit in, to belong. It's how we survive. Our brains are tuned to be part of the group, to be accepted, to find harmony in the crowd. And when you feel that urge to conform, to blend in, it's not your choice. It's a survival instinct. But here's the thing. This conformity doesn't always lead to the best decisions. It can make us act against our own values. It can make us adopt opinions we don't actually hold. It can even make us act in ways we regret. Why does this happen? You see, group pressure is a psychological force that plays on our fear of rejection. When we're surrounded by others, our subconscious is constantly asking, do they accept me? Do I belong here? It's this deep-rooted need for connection that makes group pressure so effective. Let's take a step back. Think about the last time you felt like you were swayed by the crowd. Maybe it was a trend you jumped on because everyone was talking about it. To maybe it was a decision at work where you didn't feel confident, but everyone else seemed so sure. At the moment, it doesn't feel like manipulation, right? It feels natural. It feels like it's coming from inside you. But if you look closely, you can see it. The way the group's influence shapes your actions, even when you don't want it to. So, how does it work? One of the most common tricks is the bandwagon effect. It's the idea that people will start to believe something simply because others do. The more people support an idea, the more you feel like it's the right one, even if, deep down, you know it's not. This effect can be powerful. It's a simple shift, just a little more pressure. At first, you resist, but then, the crowd grows, and with each new person who joins, the idea becomes more and more convincing. You stop questioning, and start believing. This is social conformity in action, and it doesn't need to be overt. Sometimes it's just the unspoken energy of the group, everyone looking at their phones, everyone laughing at the same joke, everyone nodding along to the same idea. The trick here is that you start to doubt your own judgment. You stop trusting your own instincts, and instead, you trust the majority. It's like you begin to dissolve into the crowd. What happens next? The next level of group pressure is groupthink, a phenomenon where the desire for harmony within the group leads to poor decision-making. People in a group stop thinking critically and begin to accept decisions just to avoid conflict or stand out. The louder the voices, the more everyone else falls in line. Think about a time when everyone at work agreed on a decision, even though something felt off. Maybe no one spoke up because everyone else seemed okay with it. That's groupthink. The fear of being the dissenting voice keeps everyone quiet, and before you know it, a bad decision is made. It's the social need for acceptance that overrides our better judgment. We think, if everyone else is doing it, it must be right. But that's where the manipulation lies. The crowd's influence can push us into situations we never would have chosen alone. But here's the trick to watch out for: the fear of standing out. It's one of the strongest forces at play in any group dynamic. If you're the only one saying, "I don't agree," or "I'm not sure," you risk being seen as the outsider. The group subtly pressures you to fall in line, to adopt their opinions, their actions, their behaviors. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you become in the eyes of the group. Let's slow down for a moment. Have you ever been in a group where you felt pressured to follow the crowd, even when you didn't want to? Maybe it was something small, like deciding where to eat, but the pressure felt real. That's the essence of group pressure. It's not loud, it's not in your face. It's soft, pervasive, and constant. It's the way people subtly influence each other to think, act, and decide in the same way. And once you recognize it, you start to see how often it happens. How often do we make decisions based on the influence of others, instead of our own instincts? Group pressure isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's as simple as someone glancing at you, expecting you to laugh at a joke, or to agree with their opinion. That tiny shift in body language, that unspoken expectation, it pushes you to conform. And that's when you have to ask, is this really your decision? Or have you just been caught in the current of the group? You might wonder how to avoid it, how to stand strong against the pull. The answer is simple, but not easy. Awareness. If you recognize group pressure for what it is, you can begin to make choices on your own terms. You can start to question, is this what I truly believe, or am I just following the crowd? Because in the end, the more aware you are of these invisible forces, the less control they have over you. So the next time you're in a situation where you feel the pressure of the crowd, stop for a second, breathe, listen to your own thoughts, and remember, your choices are yours to make, not the group's. Because in those moments, when you break free from the crowd's influence, you become truly free to think, to act, to choose, and that's real power. Name dropping. What if the truth about how we influence others is right in front of us? The trick is subtle. It's not loud or obvious, just a slight, quiet moment, a glance, or a word that shifts the balance. You find yourself in a conversation and someone drops a name, not just any name, but a name that carries weight, that resonates. They mention someone well known, someone admired. They don't say much, just enough to get your attention. It doesn't hit you all at once. It's not like an alarm going off, but there's this flicker of recognition, a small shift. Suddenly, the person speaking seems more credible, more confident. They've said nothing truly remarkable, but it's the name they've invoked that makes you pause. Your brain makes a connection, an automatic one, as if that name somehow validates everything else they're saying. It's subtle but effective. You're being manipulated, but you don't realize it, because it's so smooth, so effortless. This is name dropping, the simple yet powerful trick of mentioning influential figures to enhance your own credibility. It's a manipulation of perception, a way to make you seem more important, more knowledgeable, just by association. And it works. In this moment, you're not just hearing their words, you're processing the names they invoke, and it's shifting your perception of who they are and what they stand for. You don't question it, you don't even realize it's happening, you just feel it. Now, let's linger here for a moment. Imagine you're at a gathering, talking with someone you barely know. Suddenly, they mention a famous entrepreneur or a renowned scholar. They don't go on and on about it, but just a small mention, just a casual drop. I was talking to famous name the other day. It happens so quickly that you hardly notice the effect it has on your mind. But now, without even realizing it, your perception of the person has shifted. You think, wow, if they're connected to someone so successful, they must know what they're talking about. It's an incredibly subtle tactic, but a potent one. You're not really judging the speaker based on their expertise or experiences. No, instead, you're judging them based on the people they're able to name check, the connections they claim to have. But why does it work? Here's the thing. Human brains are wired to look for shortcuts. We're constantly processing information, trying to make sense of the world in the most efficient way possible. So when someone mentions a respected figure, we make an automatic connection between their words and the perceived authority of that name. It's a shortcut to trust. The problem, of course, is that just because someone knows someone important doesn't mean they're actually credible or knowledgeable. It's a trick, an illusion of authority, a brief moment of power borrowed from someone else's reputation. You see, name dropping isn't just about saying the names, it's about what those names represent. These names stand for success, achievement, and influence. They're symbols of power, and when someone mentions them, they're not just talking about people, they're talking about status. They're associating themselves with that status. Think about it. If someone casually mentions that they were mentored by a Fortune 500 CEO, what does that do? It paints an image in your mind. You don't just see a person, you see success, power, and expertise. Your brain makes the connection. You're subconsciously thinking, if they know that person, they must be successful too. But what if it's just a name? What if it's all smoke and mirrors? What if the person they name doesn't even know them? What if they met them once, in passing, and now they're using that name to gain favor, to build trust? It's manipulation at its finest, an illusion built on a single well-timed mention. Let's pause here for a moment. Close your eyes. Think about the last time you heard someone drop a name in conversation. Maybe it was in an office meeting, or maybe you overheard it at a party. Did you feel the shift? Did your mind adjust to the person's new status, based on nothing more than a name? It happens to all of us. We hear a name, and we immediately reassess who we're dealing with. We start assigning value based on that name, without ever truly examining the individual. It's automatic, it's instinctive, and that's why name dropping is so effective. It works by tapping into this automatic response in our brains. We don't question the influence or the connections, we just accept it. But what's the cost of this trick? It's a dangerous path to walk. By relying on others' reputations instead of building your own, you risk becoming a puppet of those you claim to know. You start living in the shadow of others' success, rather than shining in your own right. What if you stopped using the names of others to elevate your own? What if you leaned into your own story, your own experiences, your own knowledge? It's a risk, of course. It's much easier to drop a name and watch the room shift in your favor. But the real strength, the real credibility, comes when you stand on your own, without leaning on the shoulders of giants. It's not to say that using names is inherently wrong. We all do it. It's part of social interaction, part of making connections. But it's when name dropping becomes the primary tool of influence that it becomes a manipulation tactic. Now, let's think about how we might use this trick in a conversation. You're in a negotiation, or maybe you're trying to get your point across in a meeting. Suddenly, you drop a name, a powerful name, someone respected in your industry. Just the mention of their name changes the tone of the conversation. It adds weight to your words, as if their reputation validates your point. It's a brilliant move, if you're the one doing it. But if you're on the receiving end, it can leave you feeling like you've been subtly coerced into agreement. You're not questioning the person's logic or ideas. You're just accepting the influence that name carries. In the end, name dropping isn't about the names themselves. It's about the power those names hold. It's about the psychological pull they have on your perception, the way they shape how you view the person speaking. It's a tool, a manipulation tool, and like all tools, it can be used for good or ill. The trick is knowing when it's being used on you, and knowing how to resist it. So the next time you hear someone casually mention a name that seems to have a little too much power behind it, pause, notice the shift in the room, feel the pressure to believe, to agree, but also ask yourself, is it the name you're trusting, or the person who's speaking? Maybe, just maybe, the true value lies not in the connections we make, but in the authenticity we bring to the table. Bait and switch. What if the truth is hidden behind a veil of promises? The first twist. You're promised something wonderful. It seems perfect. It looks perfect. You can almost taste it. The very thing you've been waiting for. The anticipation builds up. Your mind races. This is it. This is the moment when everything falls into place. But then just when you're fully committed, it's not what you thought. It's not what you expected. In fact, it's far from it. You don't notice it right away. At first, it feels like a subtle change, a small shift. Maybe you don't even realize the bait was set, and you've already been hooked. But the difference is there. The thing you thought you were getting, it's been swapped for something else entirely. Something worse. Something that doesn't match the original promise. That's the bait and switch. A manipulation trick. So smooth, so well oiled, you might not even recognize it until it's too late. What happened? You were promised one thing, and now you're stuck with another. The rug has been pulled from beneath you, and you didn't even see it coming. It's like someone offered you a beautiful shining apple, and when you reached for it, they handed you a rotting one instead. At first you might feel a jolt of confusion, maybe even anger. But here's the thing. By the time you realize it's a bait and switch, you're already invested. You've already put in time, energy, or even money. The manipulator knows this. They know exactly when to drop the hook, the moment you're committed. This trick works so well because it plays on your trust. You expect honesty. You expect what was promised. But the moment you're vulnerable, that's when they strike. So, let's step back for a second. Let's break down how this trick works. The bait, and what's switched out. It starts with something irresistible. It's shiny. It's tempting. Maybe it's an offer you can't refuse. It's something that you desperately want, and it's presented in such a way that it seems like you're getting exactly what you need. It feels like the perfect solution to your problems. But the catch is in the details. You might think it's real, but it's not. The true intention is never to deliver what was promised. It's just to get you to buy in. Once you've taken the bait, once you've bitten, you're locked in. That's when they make the switch. The bait gets swapped out, and suddenly, you're stuck with something that doesn't meet your expectations. And what's worse, you can't get out of it. Now, think about how this works on a deeper level. Why is it so effective? Because the bait and switch taps into something that we all have, a sense of hope. We all want to believe that things are as they seem. We trust that people will follow through with what they say. We want to believe that what we see is what we get. But here's the trick. People are skilled at hiding their true intentions. They understand how to keep you focused on what you want, while quietly changing the game behind the scenes. And by the time you realize it, the window of opportunity to back out has already closed. You're already in too deep. Let's think about it from a psychological angle. What does this manipulation do to your mind? It creates a disconnect, a sense of betrayal. The expectations you had were completely shattered. You were led to believe one thing, and now you're forced to confront the fact that everything has been turned upside down. That feeling of being tricked is unsettling. It leaves you questioning your own judgment. But what makes it so insidious is that it doesn't always feel like a conscious act of betrayal. Sometimes, the manipulator is so subtle that it feels like an accident. It's not as if they were openly lying to you. The truth wasn't hidden. It was just obscured. The intention was always there, but it was buried beneath layers of charm and persuasion. What if you didn't even realize you were being manipulated? What if you didn't recognize the bait and switch until it was too late? Here's the thing. It's easy to feel embarrassed, or even ashamed when you realize you've fallen for the trick. And that's exactly what the manipulator counts on. Once you're committed, it's hard to back out. You might feel stuck. You might try to rationalize what's happening, thinking it's not as bad as it seems. Or maybe you just don't want to admit that you've been taken in. But that's the essence of the bait and switch. It forces you into a situation where you feel trapped. The switch feels like a sudden shift in reality. And now, you're stuck with the consequences. You can't undo what's been done. And often, it leaves you feeling powerless. Let's pause and take a deeper look. How do you protect yourself from this manipulation? How do you avoid falling for the bait and switch? The first step is awareness. You have to understand that this trick exists. You have to recognize that there are people out there who will use your desires, hopes, and trust against you. It's not always easy to see at first, but the more you learn to spot the signs, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself. The second step is patience. If something feels too good to be true, if it seems like the perfect deal, take a moment. Don't rush in. Take a step back. Look at the offer carefully. If the promise feels a little too polished, a little too perfect, it probably is. Now, let's get back to the psychology of the bait and switch. Why does it hurt so much when it happens? Because at its core, it's a betrayal of trust. You were led to believe in something and now it's been taken away. The manipulator doesn't just swap out the product. They swap out your perception of reality. They bend the truth so far that you start doubting what you thought you knew. And that's a dangerous thing to experience. When your sense of trust is violated, it shakes the very foundation of your understanding. You begin to wonder if you can trust anything. What's real? What's not? It becomes hard to distinguish between truth and manipulation, and that confusion can leave you feeling disoriented. In the end, the bait and switch isn't just a tactic to get what someone wants. It's a weapon designed to leave you questioning yourself. It makes you second-guess your decisions, your judgment, and your ability to discern what's real. But here's the silver lining. Once you've been burned, you'll never fall for it the same way again. The scar of the bait and switch is a reminder that manipulation doesn't always come with flashing red lights. Sometimes, it comes dressed in promises, wrapped in shiny packaging, and it's only once you've unwrapped it that you realize the trick. And maybe that's the trick in itself, the lesson that everything isn't as it seems. It's not about the switch. It's about learning to see beyond the bait, to recognize when something isn't right, even when the world tells you it should be. The next time you're tempted by something too good to be true, remember this. The bait is just that, a hook to reel you in. The switch is inevitable, but now, you know to wait before you bite. Because once the hook is in, it's not just a game, it's your reality. Optical distractions. What if you're not seeing what you think you're seeing? The trick is subtle. It's not a glaring spotlight. It's a flicker, a quick gesture, a glance that's just a second too long. It's the way someone moves, or the way they dress. Nothing overt, nothing screaming for attention. But in that small moment, something shifts. A little nudge, a tiny break in your focus. Your eyes dart to one thing, and for just a heartbeat, you've missed the bigger picture, and you don't even know it. This is the power of optical distractions, a clever manipulation of your attention, using nothing more than appearance or gesture to pull your mind away from what's truly important. You might think that distractions are loud, chaotic things, brash, obvious, but this is the opposite. It's quiet, it's clever, it's all about control, like when someone tilts their head just a bit too dramatically during a conversation, or gestures with their hands just a touch more than normal. It doesn't scream, "Look at me," but it does. It steals your focus, and in that brief second, you lose track of what you were doing, what you were thinking. It's not magic. It's manipulation, and it's deeply effective. Think about it. When was the last time someone's physical appearance or movement changed the way you felt? When someone walks into the room wearing something unexpected, doesn't it draw your eye? Doesn't it make you wonder, even just for a moment, what they're trying to say with that look? And that's when they've got you. Optical distractions work because they hijack your perception. They make you focus on what's in front of you, literally and figuratively, without realizing it. The moment you're distracted, the person can manipulate the situation in ways you won't even notice. It could be as simple as the way someone crosses their arms during an argument. The posture shifts your focus. It changes how you see the situation. It makes you think, oh, they're closed off, or they don't agree with me. It's a quick read, a fast assumption, and in that split second, your brain has made up its mind. But it's not based on words. It's based on that one subtle gesture. This manipulation works because it's so ingrained in us. Humans have evolved to pay attention to body language. We've been taught, whether consciously or not, that the way someone looks or moves tells us something about them, and that's where the power lies. Someone could be using their appearance or gestures to completely alter the power dynamic in a conversation. A simple glance or a change in posture can shift how you feel, how you react, even how you argue. It's an art form of control that doesn't require words, just careful movements, strategic placement, and of course timing. And what's more terrifying is how easy it is to manipulate. Ever heard the phrase, "The clothes make the man"? Well, it's true. What someone wears sends signals, unspoken yet understood. A flashy outfit, a confident strut, a gesture that seems bigger than life. These can distract you. They can make you feel small or important, confident or insecure. It's all about creating an illusion, because when we focus on what we see, we stop paying attention to what is. For instance, consider a negotiation. What if someone steps into a room, wearing a suit so sharp, it practically gleams? You instantly associate them with authority. You're drawn in by the visual, and you start adjusting yourself mentally to the power they exude. Meanwhile, the real manipulation has already started. While you're distracted by their appearance, they're making their move, shifting the conversation, adjusting the terms, steering the deal, and you didn't even realize it was happening until it's too late. So how does it work? It all comes down to this. When something stands out in your visual field, it grabs your attention, and once your attention is focused on one thing, your cognitive resources shift. Your mind has to focus on interpreting the visual stimuli in front of you, leaving less energy for processing other, potentially more important, elements of the situation. Maybe it's the person's posture, leaning forward just a little too much. Maybe it's the way they angle their face, just enough to appear interested, or just enough to make you feel like you should prove yourself. It's this delicate push and pull between you and them. Now imagine a scenario where someone is using their appearance to steer you off course. You're in a meeting, you're about to make an important point, but someone sits across from you, wearing something ridiculously fashionable, or making grandiose hand movements as they talk. Suddenly, you're not focused on your argument anymore. You're lost in the game of appearances, and the power dynamic has already shifted. What's most disturbing about optical distractions is how easy they are to miss. You think you're paying attention. You think you've got control over the conversation, the room, the situation, but in reality, you're being led by subtle cues. So let's slow down for a moment. When was the last time you noticed someone's body language? Did you catch the way their shoulders tensed when you disagreed? Did their smile seem forced or genuine? Or did you simply overlook it, focusing instead on what they were saying? See, optical distractions aren't just physical, they're emotional too. The appearance of confidence, the flick of a hand, the arch of an eyebrow, all of these can trigger emotional responses. You're being played, even if you don't realize it. This is the dark art of manipulation, the kind that doesn't require shouting, arguing, or even direct confrontation. It's the art of using appearance, whether it's physical gestures or clothing choices, to alter your perception, to make you see things a certain way. And once you're caught in the illusion, the real game begins. Because while you're lost in the details of what you're seeing, whether it's the way they're standing or how they're dressed, someone is working in the background. They've got your focus, and now they can bend your actions, your choices, and your responses. But why does this work so well? Why does it have such a strong hold over us? It's simple. We trust our eyes. We trust what we see. And when someone plays with that trust, when they manipulate how we see them, they're controlling the very perception of reality we rely on. The key is to notice, to step back, to remind yourself that appearances can be deceiving, that a gesture or a look doesn't tell the full story, that what's happening beneath the surface is often far more important than what you're seeing on the surface. Because once you see through the illusion, once you stop reacting to the distraction, the game is over. You'll realize that you weren't distracted by a mere flicker of light, or a stylish jacket, or a dramatic gesture. You were distracted by someone's will to control your attention. And when you understand that, you've already won. So next time you find yourself caught in someone's subtle distraction, don't panic. Don't let yourself get lost in their world of appearance. Step back, breathe, and remember, what you see isn't always what's happening. The trick is knowing when to look deeper, to see beyond the surface, to read between the lines, because that's where the real manipulation begins. Stacking the deck. What if the world around you isn't what you think it is? The first move, it's subtle. It's not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet shift, like a small gust of wind, barely noticeable, but enough to change everything. You walk into a room, and suddenly, There's something different about the people around you. Maybe it's the way they nod when you speak, or the way their eyes always seem to align with yours. Everything seems fine, but you feel a shift, a very quiet shift. This is how manipulation works. It's not about obvious force. It's about weaving small changes into the fabric of everyday life, so subtly that you don't even realize you've been changed. You don't see it coming. It just slips in, unnoticed, until it's too late. It's a strategy that's been used for centuries, stacking the deck, surrounding you with people who only see things your way, who agree with every decision, every move you make. At first it feels like support, but before long, you start to realize something isn't right. The voices around you have become the same voice, and now you're too deep in it to step out. This is manipulation at its most sinister, carefully curating the people around you, until the only voices left are the ones that affirm your every action, your every belief. The truth gets blurred, and you're left in a world where your perception of reality bends and twists without you even knowing it. Imagine this. You're in a room with 5 people. They all agree with you. Every opinion you share, every choice you make, they nod along. It's flattering, at first, right? It feels good to be validated, but the longer you stay in that room, the more you notice how everyone else seems to think just like you. It's like a mirror being held up to your thoughts, reflecting back only what you already believe. A safe space. Or is it? That's how stacking the deck works. It doesn't shout, it whispers, it plants the idea that your beliefs are universally shared. But in reality, you've been isolated in an echo chamber, your views surrounded only by people who amplify them. And little by little, you stop questioning. You stop wondering if there's another side to the story. After all, when everyone around you agrees, why should you? The most dangerous part, you start thinking it's your own mind. You begin to believe that your way of thinking is naturally the right way. You stop questioning, you stop exploring. You don't need to. Your circle has already made up your mind for you. This trick is effective because it doesn't appear harmful at first. It's easy to dismiss the first signs of manipulation. Maybe the first time you notice it, someone simply agrees with your viewpoint, or maybe it's a small comment from someone you trust. But once you've been surrounded long enough by those who share only one side of the conversation, it becomes harder to hear other voices. It becomes harder to even recognize those voices. Now, let's pause for a moment. Step back from the situation. Ask yourself, what if the opinions you're hearing aren't your own? What if those ideas have been planted by someone else? What if they've been carefully curated to steer you down a path without you even realizing it? That's the essence of manipulation, guiding someone by creating a sense of shared truth, even when it's fabricated. It's not about telling you lies outright. It's about creating an environment where truth becomes something that everyone agrees on, until you can no longer distinguish between what's real and what's been manipulated. At first it feels safe, like you're not alone in your thinking. The voices around you feel familiar, warm, reassuring. But over time, they become a kind of prison. You begin to feel comfortable in the echo, surrounded by people who think just like you, until you start realizing something's missing. There's no challenge, no contradiction, just a constant affirmation. The more you think about it, the more you realize this wasn't your choice. This wasn't your idea. It was constructed, piece by piece, until your world became a perfect reflection of your own beliefs. And now, you're stuck in it. The walls are closing in, and your view of reality has become so distorted that you can no longer find a way out. You might ask yourself, how does it happen? How does someone manipulate you this way, without you even realizing? It's deceptively simple. It begins with small steps, just a comment here, a little agreement there. It might even feel like they're being supportive, encouraging your thoughts and ideas. But soon these small affirmations build up, and before you know it, you're surrounded by people who are all on the same page. The manipulation isn't about force, it's about consensus. That's where stacking the deck becomes dangerous. Once you're in the room with people who only validate your thoughts, the idea of stepping outside of that group becomes almost impossible. Why would you? Why would you go somewhere where you're not constantly reassured? Why would you ever question the comfort of being right all the time? But that's exactly the trap, because in reality, comfort is what keeps you stuck. Comfort is what keeps you from growing. And before you know it, your world has shrunk to the confines of those who think exactly like you. You don't need new ideas, new people, or new perspectives. You've been carefully led to believe that you're already complete. Let's take a step back. What would it feel like if the people around you didn't always agree? What if they challenged your opinions? What if they pointed out the flaws in your thinking? It might be uncomfortable at first, but that's how growth happens. That's how you learn. When you're surrounded by only yes men, you stop learning, you stop questioning, you stop evolving. Imagine now that you've broken free from that echo chamber. You step into a new room, one with diverse voices, different opinions, and people who think differently than you. It feels strange at first, doesn't it? The tension, the questions, the uncomfortableness of hearing something you've never heard before. But that discomfort is exactly what you need. It's the signal that you're about to grow, that you're about to break free from the manipulation. Now, here's the real trick. The moment you recognize the manipulation, the moment you see that the deck has been stacked against you, you're free. The illusion dissolves. You begin to realize that the world isn't as narrow as you once thought. You can breathe again, and you can choose who you surround yourself with, who shapes your beliefs, and who you let influence your thoughts. So what's the lesson here? The trick of stacking the deck is that it feels safe, too safe. It feels right, because it's comfortable, but comfort is a cage. And once you notice that the voices around you are the same ones over and over, you'll see the manipulation for what it is. That's when the real power kicks in, the power to choose, to step outside the echo chamber, and seek new perspectives, to find truth, not in agreement, but in understanding. And when you do that, you can break free from the chains of manipulation, because the moment you stop relying on the deck to be stacked in your favor, is the moment you start playing the game by your own rules. And that, well, that's freedom.
False consensus. What if the world you see around you isn't the whole truth? The first trick. There's a moment when you feel it. Just a shift in the air. It's subtle, almost unnoticeable, but something about it doesn't sit right. You're in a conversation, maybe in a group, and everyone seems to share the same opinion. It's easy to go along with it, isn't it? After all, everyone else agrees. But do they? That's the thing with the false consensus. It makes you think everyone else is on the same page. But it's a carefully orchestrated illusion. You're not being asked for your true opinion. You're being led down a path where your voice is just another echo in the crowd. It's quiet. It's sneaky. And before you even realize it, you've been manipulated into thinking that everyone else's beliefs are your own. Here's how it works. In social situations, we all want to belong. We want to be part of the group, to fit in. So when someone expresses an opinion, and everyone else agrees, there's a feeling of safety, even relief. The group is united. You're part of something bigger than yourself. But what if that unity is fake? What if the group is only pretending to agree to make you feel like you're the one out of place? It happens all the time. Think about it. When you're at work, in class, or even in your family, someone presents an idea, a suggestion, or even a belief, and suddenly, everyone nods along. No one challenges it. No one speaks up. It feels safe, almost comforting, and without realizing it, you start to believe that everyone thinks the same way you do. But deep down, that's where the trick lies. The false consensus plays on your need for validation. It taps into your subconscious desire to feel like you belong, that you're accepted, and it whispers to you, everyone else agrees. You must be right to think the same way. What if you take a step back for a second? When you pause and think about it, things don't always add up. Maybe there's someone, somewhere, quietly disagreeing. But because the false consensus holds strong, you never hear their voice. It gets drowned out by the chorus of approval. It's like a game of psychological sleight of hand. The illusion of agreement is built up through subtle cues, like body language, tone of voice, and even shared expressions. The trick here isn't about outright lying. It's about creating a false sense of unity, a feeling that everyone shares the same belief. And the more you see it, the more you start to believe it. Let's stay here for a moment. Think about a time you've experienced it. Maybe it was in a group of friends, a work meeting, or even in a family gathering. The person leading the discussion says something, and suddenly, everyone else nods in agreement. How did you feel in that moment? Did you feel like you should speak up, or stay quiet? Did you ever wonder if there was a different opinion that wasn't being voiced? The thing about the false consensus is that it doesn't always show itself immediately. It slowly builds up, like a shadow creeping behind the light, and by the time it's fully formed, you might feel too nervous, too unsure, or even too lazy to challenge it. But why do we fall for it so easily? Because deep down, we're wired to seek approval. It's hardwired into us, this need to belong, to be accepted by the group. The false consensus exploits that need. It makes us think that everyone else thinks the same way we do. And in doing so, it silently pressures us to conform, to stay within the lines of what's considered normal. But here's the twist. What if you're not just conforming to the group? What if you're being manipulated into thinking the group is more unified than it really is? What if there's a deeper, darker force at play, bending your reality just enough to make you doubt your own thoughts? In that moment, the illusion feels powerful, it feels real, but the moment you question it, the manipulation starts to break down. You don't have to be the one who stands up and challenges the consensus right away. Sometimes, simply pausing, asking yourself why everyone seems to agree, can be enough. It's about noticing the cracks in the facade, understanding that just because no one is speaking up, doesn't mean everyone is in agreement. It's a simple shift in awareness. But what if that's not enough? What if in the back of your mind, you start to wonder if you're the one who's wrong? The more you hear it, the same opinions, the same voices, the harder it becomes to trust your own. The false consensus keeps pulling you in, whispering that maybe, just maybe, you're the one who's out of sync. Let's explore that idea for a moment. What if that little voice inside you is the one that's right? What if the reason you're uncomfortable with the group's opinions is because you're the one thinking outside the box? The trick is, you don't always need to agree with the crowd. The crowd isn't always right. It's an uncomfortable thought, isn't it? The next time you find yourself in a situation where everyone seems to agree, take a moment to ask yourself, do I really think this way? Or am I just going along because it feels easier? It's important to remember that people who manipulate using the false consensus technique are playing on your fear of being alone, of being left out. They create an environment where disagreement feels like the exception, not the rule. The trick is in the subtle pressure to conform. The more you try to go along, the more you feel like you're part of the collective whole, the more the manipulation deepens. Now, let's slow down and think about it from another angle. The false consensus doesn't always need to be a huge public confrontation. It doesn't need to involve shouting or heavy-handed persuasion. Often, it's the quiet pressure that gets to you, the subtle nods, the shared looks, the unspoken agreement. It's an invisible chain that tugs you closer to the group's side without you even realizing it. In the end, what happens when you stop playing along? What happens when you reject the consensus and decide to speak your truth? It's terrifying, no doubt, but it's also freeing. Because once you've recognized the false consensus for what it is, you break the chain. You free yourself from the need to agree with the crowd, from the subtle manipulation that shapes your choices, and that's the key. It's not about rejecting all opinions or isolating yourself. It's about awareness, understanding that just because everyone around you seems to agree doesn't mean you have to. That's how you reclaim your own power. That's how you break free from the pressure to conform. So the next time you feel the false consensus creeping in, when everyone else around you seems to think the same way, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, is this really what I believe? Or am I just agreeing because everyone else is? That's the first step. The awareness that you don't have to follow the crowd. You can think for yourself. You can stand apart. And when you do, you'll realize something truly freeing. In that moment, you are no longer just another part of the crowd. You are your own person, and that's when true power begins.
Withholding information. What if the decisions you make aren't entirely yours? The first trick is subtle. At first, you might not even notice it happening. Someone says something, or maybe they don't. Information is kept from you, just out of reach, and yet, somehow your choices are being influenced. They've left a gap, a space where you're forced to fill in the blanks, not with logic, not with facts, but with whatever your mind wants to believe. You feel like you're in control, but the reality is that the choice you think you're making has already been nudged. It's not loud, it's not obvious, but it's there. A faint feeling that something is off. You know the information is missing, but by the time you realize it, you're already too far down the path. That's the power of withholding information, a manipulation trick, so effective, you might not even know it's been played. It's like walking through life with a blindfold on. Only someone's holding the strings. They guide you where they want you to go. Not by force, not by shouting, but by simply choosing which pieces of the puzzle you get to see, and which ones they leave out. What does it mean when someone withholds information from you? The first step, to make you feel like you're in control, like the decision is yours to make. They don't directly tell you what to do, but they shape the conversation, subtly steering you toward a conclusion. They present what they want you to know, and leave out what doesn't serve their agenda. You're not being forced, you're not being pressured, but slowly, without realizing it, your choices narrow. The options you thought you had begin to disappear, replaced by the ones they've left visible. And the moment you act on your decision, you don't feel manipulated at all. You feel confident. You feel certain. But what if your certainty isn't yours? What if it's just an illusion, crafted by the pieces of information you never received? Think of it like a magician's trick. The magician never reveals how the trick is done. They focus your attention somewhere else, making you believe you saw everything, while they hide what matters in plain sight. You, the audience, never suspect a thing. Why is withholding information so powerful? It works because it plays on our natural desire to feel competent. We want to believe we have all the facts. We want to trust that what we know is enough to make a sound decision. When someone withholds key details, it triggers something deep within us. We feel like we're lacking, like something is missing, but we don't know what it is. In that gap, the manipulator swoops in. They provide just enough to guide you, without ever fully revealing the truth. It's like a puzzle, where only a few pieces are shown, but the puzzle itself is much bigger than you realize. You think you've completed the picture,
But there's more hidden beneath the surface, and in that space between what you know and what you don't, you've already made your choice. Only it's not the choice you should have made. It's not about controlling you with force. It's about controlling what you know, how you see the world, and ultimately how you make decisions. Let's pause for a moment. Take a breath. Think of the last time someone withheld something from you. Maybe it was an important detail in a conversation, or perhaps a document left out of a meeting. How did you feel? Did you notice it right away? Or did it take a while before you realized the truth was missing? In that moment, you were manipulated, not through aggression or pressure, but through omission. And it works every time, because it's so easy to believe that you're making your own choices. How does withholding information affect your decision-making? It changes everything. Imagine a situation where you're given half the story. You think you're making an informed decision, but you don't know what's hidden from you. It's like driving a car, but only having a view through a small crack in the windshield. You can't see everything clearly, but you assume you're on the right path. This is the core of manipulation. Through withholding, the goal isn't to stop you from making a choice. It's to make sure the choice you make is the one they want, and they do that by leaving out the pieces that would lead you to a different conclusion. The trick is in the uncertainty. They don't have to tell you the truth. They only need to create enough doubt in your mind so you're unable to fully see what's going on. They make you feel like you have options, but they're not real options. They've carefully curated the choices you can see, and once you choose one of them, you don't feel manipulated at all. You feel like you've made an informed decision, because you didn't even realize the information that would have changed everything was kept from you. But that's the dark beauty of it. You don't have to feel the weight of manipulation. You don't have to resist it. You just make the choice they want you to make, without even knowing why. So how do you spot this trick? It's not easy. Most of the time, when information is withheld, it's done so subtly that you don't even notice. But there are clues, little gaps, things that don't add up. Pay attention when something doesn't quite feel right, but you can't put your finger on it. That's often a sign that something is being left out. Maybe they give you the facts, but not the context. Maybe they highlight a few details, but leave out the ones that would change your perspective entirely. The real manipulation isn't in what they tell you, it's in what they don't. Think of the last time you found out something critical that you weren't told earlier. How did it change your perspective? Did you feel like something had been taken from you? That's the trick. They've hidden something important, and the moment you discover it, you realize just how much it was shaping your decisions. It's almost like a test of how much you're willing to trust what you're given, without questioning the parts that are left out. What does it all mean? Withholding information is a dark trick, but it's effective. It's not about making you act against your will. It's about manipulating your perception of choice. When you don't know what you don't know, your decisions are vulnerable. And here's the thing, you're not always going to notice when it happens. You might even think you're being fair, or that you're making a balanced choice, but somewhere in the gaps, the truth is being kept from you. So next time you're in a situation where decisions are being made, ask yourself, what aren't they telling me? What's missing from the story? Because in those missing pieces, that's where the manipulation lives. Now imagine how much power is in your hands when you start to notice it, when you start to see the gaps, because the moment you know the trick, you can see right through it. You're not just deciding based on what's in front of you. You're deciding with the knowledge of what's been held back, and that knowledge, that's the key. Now ask yourself, will you keep filling in the blanks with what you want to believe? Or will you see things as they really are? Because once you start noticing the spaces between the truth, you're no longer controlled. You're free to decide, to see, to know. And isn't that kind of powerful? Controlling the setting. Imagine this. You're walking into a room. The air is thick with a strange, almost imperceptible energy. The walls are painted in neutral tones. The lighting soft, almost deliberate. Every chair is arranged, just so perfectly aligned, perfectly symmetrical. It feels just right, almost too right. You don't notice it at first, but soon something shifts inside you. You feel comfortable, maybe even a bit too comfortable. Your defenses are lowering without you realizing it. The temperature, the ambience, it's all working to ease you into a state of mind that's open, receptive. You might not even be aware of how much the surroundings are influencing you, but trust me, it's happening. This is controlling the setting. The environment around you isn't just there to exist. It's been carefully crafted. It's the hidden hand, guiding you, shaping your thoughts, nudging your behavior, without you even noticing. It's not magic, it's manipulation. Now, let's dive into how the subtle art of controlling your surroundings can give someone an unfair advantage over your perception, your decisions, and even your emotions. Imagine walking into a room lit with harsh, cold fluorescent lights. How do you feel? Probably a little on edge, maybe even uncomfortable. Now picture the same room, but with soft, warm lighting. Suddenly, it feels welcoming, cozy. You might even find yourself relaxing. Lighting isn't just about visibility, it's about mood. Bright, cold light can make you feel exposed, tense, and alert. On the other hand, dimmer, warmer light can make you feel more comfortable, calm, and at ease. This is something that's often used by people who want to influence your decisions without you even realizing it. If you want someone to feel more open, relaxed, and trusting, dim the lights. If you need them to feel sharp and focused, turn up the brightness. You see, the way light is controlled in a room can shift your emotional state in subtle but powerful ways. And once your emotions shift, so do your decisions. Let's talk about seating. It might seem like a trivial detail, but in reality, the way people are arranged in a room can dictate power dynamics without a single word being spoken. Picture this. You're sitting at a round table. Everyone's face to face. It feels equal, doesn't it? But if you're seated at the head of the table, the position automatically places you in charge, even if you've said nothing. Your body language, the way people interact with you, the space you occupy, it all shifts. The seat at the head of the table is symbolic. It represents authority. Manipulators know that seating arrangements are a huge tool for subtly asserting dominance. Think about the last time you were at a meeting or social gathering. Did you notice how some people always end up sitting in places of power? They might not have said anything to claim that power, but they don't need to. The seat did the work for them. Ever notice how music in a store can influence how long you stay, or how much you spend? It's not a coincidence. Sound, just like light, can influence your mood and behavior. Fast-paced music might make you feel more energetic, while slow, calming tunes can put you at ease. Manipulators use music to control the pacing of situations. In a restaurant, slow, soothing music may keep you lingering, ordering just a little bit more than you originally planned. In a meeting, upbeat background tunes might make everyone feel more positive and open to suggestions. The right soundtrack can boost creativity or reinforce a specific vibe, making you more susceptible to the message being delivered. Sound isn't just a background detail, it's an integral part of controlling the setting. The next time you're in a public space, notice how the music, the tone of the conversation, or even the absence of sound can shape your behavior. It's subtle, but it's always there, working its magic. The colors surrounding you are not just for decoration, they're playing a role in how you feel and think. It's called color psychology, and it's a manipulator's secret weapon. Blue tones are known to calm, promote trust, and enhance concentration. That's why you'll see so many corporate offices painted in shades of blue. Red, on the other hand, evokes urgency, passion, and sometimes aggression. Ever wonder why sales signs are often red? It's not just about catching your eye. It's about triggering a sense of urgency, making you act faster. Manipulators understand the power of color. If they want you to feel relaxed and compliant, they'll opt for soft greens or blues. If they want to stir emotions, get you excited, or even feel a sense of urgency, they'll opt for fiery reds or oranges. The color scheme isn't just about looks, it's about creating a psychological impact that shapes how you interact with your environment. What if I told you that the temperature in a room can change how you make decisions? It's true. Temperature isn't just about comfort, it's about control. Cold environments make people more rational and less likely to be swayed by emotions. On the flip side, warmer temperatures make people more emotional, more cooperative, and more likely to make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. This is why negotiations in colder, air-conditioned rooms tend to be more analytical, while those in warmer, cozier settings often lead to more relaxed, emotional exchanges. Manipulating the temperature in a space can influence how you approach a situation, whether it's making a sale or getting someone to agree to your terms. A well-timed adjustment of the thermostat could be the difference between a calm, reasoned conversation and an emotional plea for agreement. Time and space are two of the most overlooked tools in manipulation, yet they are powerful. Think about how time is used to manipulate your decision-making. Ever had a salesperson tell you, "This deal won't last long," or "You need to act fast"? This creates a sense of urgency, pushing you to make decisions in the heat of the moment, when you're less likely to think things through logically. Similarly, space can manipulate your behavior. A small cramped room can make you feel pressured, confined. You might find yourself agreeing to things just to get out of there. A large open room can make you feel more relaxed, more at ease, ready to engage or discuss. Manipulators know how to use space to make you feel either trapped or comfortable, steering your behavior accordingly. In the end, controlling the setting is all about understanding the subconscious impact the environment has on you. The lighting, the seating, the colors, the sound, it's all part of an invisible framework designed to make you feel a certain way, to influence your decisions without you even realizing it. Manipulators are keenly aware of this. They'll use the surroundings to make you feel more comfortable, more trusting, or more rushed, depending on what they need from you. And you won't even know it's happening until it's too late.
Slippery slope. What if the world isn't as simple as it seems? The first move, it starts subtly. It's not loud or glaring. It's a whisper, a suggestion, like a thought that creeps in unnoticed. You hear someone say, "It's not a big deal, just a small change," and you almost don't notice the shift at first. But something feels off. You wonder, what's the harm in this? Why does it feel like it could be the beginning of something else? It's not a terrifying tactic, at least not at first. It's all about perspective, a shift, ever so slight, but enough to make you doubt, to nudge you just enough for you to say, "Okay, I'll go along with this." It's that moment when someone argues that a small, seemingly harmless step will lead to something drastic, something irreversible, and it's all based on the idea that once you take that first step, there's no turning back. This is the slippery slope, an argument that plays on fear, on what could happen next. It makes you see the tiniest action as a gateway to a much worse outcome. One small move, and it's all downhill from there. A chain reaction, and it's clever. It's not always obvious. Often, it's so subtle, it feels almost logical. After all, if you're already here,
What's stopping you from going a little further? It's the art of convincing you that a small choice today will create an avalanche tomorrow. And suddenly, you're not just making one decision, you're making a series of them, each one compounding into something much larger than it ever needed to be. But let's pause for a moment. Let's think about this. When someone says, if we do this now, it'll lead to that, what do they really mean? Why does it sound so convincing? The slippery slope trick works because it's built on a certain kind of logic, a logic that plays into your fears, your doubts, and your sense of control. It sounds like a reasonable argument at first. One thing leads to another, but when you really dig into it, you realize that the logic is flawed. There's no inevitable chain reaction, no absolute certainty that this will lead to that. In reality, the world isn't a straight line. It's unpredictable, and while one action might influence the next, it's not always a guarantee that the worst case will unfold. So why do we believe it? Because fear is powerful, and the slippery slope preys on that. It taps into your need to avoid what's bad, what's uncomfortable, and what might be disastrous. It's easier to see danger in the future when someone lays it out for you, especially when they do it with such confidence. Think about it like this. Imagine someone says, if you don't accept this now, things will spiral out of control. It's easy to start thinking, well, maybe if I just go along with it, I'll prevent that terrible future from happening. And just like that, you've made a decision based on a fear of what might happen, not what is actually going to happen. That's the trick. It's not the step that's dangerous. It's the exaggerated fear of what could come next. And that's where the real manipulation lies. The slippery slope convinces you that you're in a losing battle. It pressures you into acting before you've fully considered all your options. It builds a false narrative of inevitability, a future that's already written, one where you're powerless to stop the fall. But here's the thing, that future is a choice. It's not written in stone. The slippery slope doesn't account for your ability to change direction. It doesn't account for the fact that decisions aren't always made in isolation. There's always room for adjustment, for rethinking. Just because one thing happens doesn't mean the next step is already mapped out. It's easy to let fear take the lead, but when you stop to ask, is this really going to happen? You give yourself a chance to break free of the slippery slope. What if the real power lies in your ability to choose, to pause and look at the situation without the pressure of an impending disaster hanging over you? What if, instead of accepting that one small choice will push you into chaos, you question it? What if you realize that you get to decide whether this step leads somewhere dangerous, or if it's simply just that, one small step in the grand scheme of things? Imagine for a moment that you're standing on a path. Someone says, if you take this step, you'll fall. The slippery slope is designed to make you afraid of that fall. But what if you look closely and realize the path is stable? What if the ground beneath you isn't as fragile as it seems? What if that fall is more of a story, an exaggeration, than an actual threat? It's like watching someone point to a tiny ripple in water and claiming it will become a tsunami. Sure, the ripple might grow, but it doesn't mean you're headed for disaster. The water can settle, the ripple can fade, and the next step you take doesn't have to be a leap into the unknown. But here's where it gets tricky. The slippery slope isn't just about logic, it's about control. When you're manipulated into believing that one step will lead to the end of everything, you give up your power, you stop questioning, you stop choosing, and that's when the manipulation succeeds. It's not about the argument, it's not about the step itself, it's about making you feel like you have no control. It's about making you think that you're already caught in a web that can't be undone. But if you can stop, breathe, and remind yourself that no choice is the only choice, that things are not always as inevitable as they seem. You take back your power. The slippery slope loses its grip when you stop fearing the worst without proof. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. The next time you hear someone say, "If you do this, it will lead to that," stop and think. Take a step back. Is it really the only outcome? Is it truly a downhill slide? Or is it just another decision, one that can be guided by your own logic, your own reasoning? It's easy to get caught in the trap. It's easy to let fear tell you what's coming next. But remember, fear often speaks louder than reason. And while the slippery slope might feel convincing, it's not the truth. You get to decide. You get to choose the path you walk, one step at a time, without the fear of an exaggerated future shaping your choices. So the next time you're faced with that argument, when someone points to a minor decision and claims it will lead to an extreme result, ask yourself, what's really at stake here? Are you really falling, or just taking a step? Because sometimes, the scariest part of the slope isn't the fall, it's the belief that you're already doomed.
Moral equivalence. What if everything you thought you knew about right and wrong was upside down? Let's talk about a trick that's dark and sneaky. It's the art of moral equivalence, a dangerous game played with words and ideas, where two things that are clearly different get painted as the same. Imagine this: you're in an argument, and someone tries to draw a comparison between two situations. One is clearly wrong. Maybe it's an act of cruelty, something that hurts others deeply. The other, it's a minor mistake, something that's usually forgiven. But when someone says they're basically the same, that's moral equivalence at work. It doesn't shout, it doesn't scream, it's not overtly obvious, that it quietly warps the truth, bending it into something unrecognizable. You might even start to question yourself. Could they be right? That's the core of moral equivalence. It tricks you into believing that different actions, sometimes wildly different, are on the same moral level. The harm caused by cruelty is suddenly on par with a casual mistake. And once this idea sinks in, it clouds judgment. It makes it harder to see right from wrong. The trick is subtle, almost invisible. It doesn't announce itself like a neon sign. It blends into the conversation, planting seeds of doubt in your mind, making you question what you know is true. Let's stay here for a second. Take a deep breath. Let the idea of moral equivalence settle in. You don't need to solve it right now. Just feel the weight of what it means to compare two things that shouldn't be compared. Now picture this. Someone tells you that a small lie is just like a big one. In the moment, it feels like they're just simplifying things. But that simplicity is a trick, a tool to make you lose sight of the actual consequences of each action. A small lie might hurt a few feelings, but a big lie that could destroy lives, tear apart families. Yet, with moral equivalence, suddenly both are just lies. It seems harmless, but that's the problem. You're not seeing the full picture. Why does this trick feel so powerful? Why does it sneak past your defenses? It's because moral equivalence feeds on our natural desire for fairness. We want to believe that all actions are weighed equally, that everyone should be judged on the same scale. But in doing so, we overlook the nuance, the gravity of each situation. That's what makes moral equivalence such a dangerous tool. It simplifies the complex, wiping away the differences that matter. Take a moment. Think about a time you've heard someone justify harmful behavior by comparing it to something much smaller. Maybe you've seen it in the news or experienced it yourself. What did it do to your thoughts? Did you start to question the severity of the situation? This is where the real danger of moral equivalence lies. It's not about convincing you that one action is right. It's about making you doubt what you already know to be wrong.
You see, the truth is often more complicated than the simple comparisons we make. Comparing a theft of food to a theft of a car might seem like an easy shortcut, but when you start to dig deeper, the consequences are different. The context is different. The intentions, completely different. But if you keep saying they're the same, eventually you start to lose sight of those differences, and that's what moral equivalence does. It blurs those lines. It turns nuance into noise. But here's where it gets really tricky. Moral equivalence doesn't just appear in debates or arguments. It shows up in politics, in advertising, even in personal relationships. You might hear it in a political debate, when someone compares two completely different situations to justify their point of view. Or in relationships, when one person tries to downplay their actions by pointing out a similar but much smaller mistake made by the other. But it doesn't stop there. This trick is everywhere. It's in the little comments we make about people, situations, and actions that subtly diminish the impact of harm. It's in the way we dismiss serious mistakes, telling ourselves or others, "It wasn't that bad." Moral equivalence often plays on your emotions. It appeals to your sense of fairness, your need for balance. It whispers in your ear, saying things like, "Why are we making such a big deal out of this? Everyone makes mistakes. It's all the same." But is it really? Let's take a step back. What would happen if we didn't fall for this trick? What if, instead of comparing everything to everything else, we looked at the real consequences of each action? What if we acknowledged the severity of harm done, not just the surface similarities? It would change how we see the world. It would force us to recognize the weight of our decisions and actions. We'd start to see that not all things are equal, and some deserve more attention than others. Imagine a society that stopped trying to flatten every issue into a simple equivalence, where people could acknowledge that one mistake might be forgivable, while another might need deeper reflection. It's not about judgment, but about understanding the layers of impact, the ripple effects. This is where moral equivalence fails. It oversimplifies, leaving no room for depth. It encourages us to gloss over the complexity of the world around us. And once you start thinking in those oversimplified terms, it's hard to see things clearly again. But here's the twist. Moral equivalence isn't always so obvious. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. It can sneak into casual conversations, slipping by unnoticed. You might hear someone say, "Well, everyone does it, so it's not a big deal," and before you know it, you've lost sight of the real issue. This is how moral equivalence subtly shapes our behavior, by making us believe that everything is the same. It tricks us into not caring about the details. It dulls our sense of right and wrong, blurring the lines until we can't see them anymore. The trick is in the simplicity of it. If everything is equal, then nothing is truly important. If a lie is the same as a crime, why bother caring about either? If harm is all on the same level, why pay attention to who gets hurt and how? This is where moral equivalence weakens us. It steals the nuance that allows us to think critically, to evaluate each situation for what it truly is. It removes the power of distinction. The next time you hear someone drawing false comparisons, ask yourself, are these truly the same? Really look at the facts. Don't let the trick cloud your judgment. Recognize that the differences are there, even if they're hard to see at first. The moral of the story: not everything is equal, and recognizing the difference between actions, understanding the true weight of what's right and what's wrong, isn't just important, it's essential. Because when we fall for moral equivalence, we lose the ability to make real judgments. We lose our sense of morality, and that's a trick no one should fall for. So next time you encounter moral equivalence, pause, think, see through the fog, recognize the difference, and refuse to let the trick take hold. In doing so, you'll keep your moral compass clear, and that's power.
Circular reasoning. Have you ever felt like someone was pulling the strings, just out of sight? The trick: it's not loud, it's not obvious,
It's subtle, like a shadow in the corner of your vision. You walk into a situation, or you hear a comment, and for a moment you feel something shift. It's not a clear thought. It's a feeling like someone has nudged your mind, gently steering you in a direction you didn't choose. You didn't ask for it. You didn't even see it coming. But there it is, subtly influencing your decisions. And yet when you look back, nothing seems amiss. Everything is normal. Except you feel different. You feel like something has changed, but you can't quite pinpoint it. That's manipulation. A quiet force that works just under the surface, shaping your thoughts, controlling your actions, without you even realizing it. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't push. It pulls. But what if it's worse than that? What if you've been manipulated without even knowing it? What if there's a trick that's been used on you all along, hidden in plain sight? This trick is called circular reasoning, a manipulation technique so sneaky, it doesn't even look like manipulation. You've probably heard someone say something like this: "It's true because I said so," or "That's just how it is." At first, it sounds convincing. It almost feels like common sense. But here's the catch. Circular reasoning doesn't actually prove anything. It just repeats the same point over and over, like a loop that never ends. It's a form of self-perpetuating logic. The argument goes in circles, and every time it loops, it feels more and more true. It starts with a conclusion, then goes back to that conclusion as proof, and somehow, you're left believing it. Think about this for a moment. If I told you that a particular rule was absolutely right, and then explained why it was right, by saying because it's true, would you believe me? It sounds logical, doesn't it? But I haven't provided any new information, just restated the original idea. That's the essence of circular reasoning. Now imagine someone using this tactic to control your thoughts. They start with a statement that they want you to believe, and then they keep circling back to that statement, using it as evidence to support itself. Over time, you start to accept it as truth, even though it's not really saying anything new. It's a dangerous game, because it tricks you into thinking you're agreeing with something solid, when in reality, you're just spinning your wheels in the same place. But you don't realize it, not at first. Let's pause here for a second. Do you remember the last time someone tried to convince you of something with circular reasoning? Maybe it was in a heated argument, or a discussion that just seemed to go nowhere. Perhaps you didn't notice the loop at first, but after a while, you started feeling like the other person was winning the argument, without ever really making a point. And that's how circular reasoning works. It lulls you into submission. It's an invisible force, pulling you down a rabbit hole that you never even saw coming. So why does this technique work so well? It's because it plays on something very human, the need for certainty. We want to know that what we believe is true. We want answers. We want structure. And when someone hands us something that feels logical, something that sounds like an explanation, even if it isn't, we latch onto it. But here's the thing. Circular reasoning doesn't just manipulate the mind, it manipulates your emotions too. It creates a false sense of security, making you think that if something's repeated enough, it must be right. That repetition tricks your brain into thinking it's valid. It feels like a safe answer, like something solid to stand on. But there's nothing solid there. There's just a circle, a closed loop that leads nowhere. Now let's dive deeper into how this can be used. Imagine a manipulative person in your life, someone who is trying to get you to believe a false narrative. They might say things like, "I'm always right, because I know what's best," or "I'm the only one who understands." It's circular reasoning at its finest. They start with the idea that they know better, and then use that very claim as proof. Each statement just reinforces the last, making it harder to argue against. But here's the truth. If someone is using circular reasoning on you, they're not interested in your point of view. They don't want a real conversation. They want to trap you in a cycle of self-referencing logic that doesn't go anywhere. And every time you engage, you get pulled deeper into the loop. How do you escape it? Well, the first step is recognizing the pattern. Once you spot the circular reasoning, you can start questioning it. And that without with a firkum sol fig, but you circum straighten you. Ask yourself, what's actually being proven here? Where's the evidence? Instead of accepting the cycle, step outside of it. Break the loop. Now this isn't always easy. In fact, it can be incredibly hard to spot circular reasoning in the heat of an argument or a persuasive conversation. It's not always obvious. It's often wrapped in confident tones, smooth words, and persuasive gestures. But once you know what to look for, it becomes easier to identify. So why do people use circular reasoning in the first place? The answer is simple: because it works. It's an efficient way to control the narrative. By keeping the logic circular, they can avoid real discussion, dodge tough questions, and keep you stuck in their version of reality. You'll end up agreeing with them, not because they've convinced you, but because they've trapped you in their logic, not with a vrakenjol. And here's the kicker: once you're in the loop, it's hard to get out. The more you hear the same reasoning, the more it becomes ingrained in your thinking. It's like hearing a song on repeat. After a while, you can't help but sing along, even if you didn't like it at first. But there's something important you need to understand. Circular reasoning isn't a real argument. It's an illusion. It's a trick of the mind. And once you see it for what it is, you'll never be fooled by it again. So the next time you hear someone tell you something that feels like it makes sense, but doesn't actually add up, stop and ask yourself, what's the proof here? What's really being said? Because once you break free from the circle, the world outside is a lot clearer. And that's the beauty of it. Once you see the manipulation, you can step away. You can choose to think for yourself again, without being swayed by empty logic. You'll find that your mind is sharper, your thoughts are clearer, and your decisions are your own. That's freedom, and that's the power of recognizing the manipulation. You don't need to be trapped in someone else's loop. You're in control, always.
False dilemma. What if every choice you think you're making is already controlled? The first tactic: there's a moment when you're presented with a decision. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, just a subtle shift in the options laid before you. You're asked to choose, but the trick is already in place. You think you're picking freely, but there's only one way the outcome can go. The options seem clear enough. Or B. But what if you're not seeing the full picture? What if there's more choices that could open a door to a different outcome? Maybe there's a C, D, and E, but you're not allowed to see them. That's the false dilemma, a psychological sleight of hand that makes you believe you're faced with two choices, when in fact, you're being led to only one. It's subtle. The false dilemma doesn't come with bright flashing lights or alarms. It's quiet, like a shadow lurking behind what you see. It's the illusion of choice, but with a slight twist. It pushes you to make a decision without realizing that the other possibilities are out of sight, deliberately hidden from your awareness. Let's stay with that thought for a second. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. You've been given two paths, both leading to different places, but what you don't know is that the path you think is a choice is already narrowing your future, channeling you down one specific route. It's not obvious at first, but look closer. What if both options are limiting your ability to choose freely? What if both are traps? The false dilemma doesn't just give you a limited set of choices, it takes away your ability to see what's beyond them. It keeps you trapped in a box where all roads lead to the same destination. Why does this happen? It could be someone trying to control the narrative. By presenting only two options,
They create a sense of urgency, making you feel like you must pick one. You're expected to decide right now, and when you do, you've already walked into a corner you didn't realize was there. But it's not about you. It's about control. The person who sets the false dilemma wants you to feel like you're making a decision on your own. They want you to believe you're in control of your choices, but in reality, the illusion of choice makes you easier to guide. Imagine a salesperson trying to sell you a product. They present you with two choices, this option or that one. Both sound good, right? But neither one is actually the best choice for you. You're given the illusion that you have freedom, but in reality, you've just been steered toward the product they want you to buy. This is the power of the false dilemma. It makes you believe that there's only one path forward, even though there might be countless other options waiting if only you were shown them. Let's take a deeper look. You've probably seen this tactic in political debates. A politician gives you two options, one that's extreme, the other moderate, but both lead to the same result. The aim is not to give you a real choice, but to make you feel like you're part of a decision-making process, when, in fact, you're simply being pushed into a box that fits their agenda. It's easy to fall into this trap. The false dilemma works because it plays on your instincts. It's the art of narrowing choices, so that the only reasonable option feels like the one you're being offered. It's quick, it's efficient, and it works, especially when you're not paying close attention. But once you notice it, you can start to see through the smoke and mirrors. The key is to pause, slow down. Don't rush into making a decision. Ask yourself, what else is out there? What am I missing? Sometimes when you feel backed into a corner, it's because someone's used this trick on you. They want you to choose, but they don't want you to know there are other ways out. Let's explore that for a moment. The false dilemma works on the assumption that you'll make decisions quickly. That's why it thrives in high-pressure situations. It plays on the fear of missing out, on making the wrong choice. But if you take a step back, if you breathe, and take a moment to reflect, you can often uncover the hidden choices. This tactic also relies on your emotions. When you're emotional, you're more likely to make hasty decisions without thinking clearly. That's when the false dilemma shines brightest. It knows you'll react, maybe out of stress, fear, or even excitement, and in that reaction, it's easy to fall into the trap. In relationships, you might see this when someone presents you with a choice between two extremes. If you love me, you'll do this. If you don't, then you clearly don't care. But the truth is, neither option is healthy or fair. The false dilemma here isn't really about love, it's about control. The person making the demand wants to make you feel cornered, so you choose what they want, not because it's the best choice, but because it's the only one you're given. So, how do you break free? The first step is recognizing when you're being manipulated. When you feel pressure to make a decision without being given all the information, that's a clear sign. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing? It's important to widen your perspective, and remember that there's almost always more than just two options. Taking your time is another key. Manipulation works when it forces you to act quickly. If you can slow down, you'll start to see more possibilities. You'll begin to uncover the hidden paths that have been purposely hidden from your view. The false dilemma can also be found in the way people frame arguments. When someone says, "You're either with us or against us," it's a tactic designed to simplify a complex issue into two polarized options. It removes nuance, turning complex ideas into an us versus them scenario. But the truth is, the world isn't divided into two clear categories. It's messy, it's complex, and by recognizing the false dilemma, you start to understand that there are countless ways to approach a problem. Here's the secret. The more you question the either-or choices, the more you begin to see the bigger picture. you realize that life isn't about being forced into a decision between two things. It's about exploring all the possibilities, even the ones that aren't obvious at first. And that's the power of breaking free from the false dilemma. When you see it for what it is, you gain control over your own choices again. No one can force you into a box when you've learned how to think outside of it. So, the next time you feel pushed into making a decision between two options, stop for a moment. Ask yourself, is this really all there is? Look around, look deeper, and most importantly, remember, there's always more than one choice, and maybe, just maybe, that's the trick you've been missing all along. Isn't it kind of beautiful, realizing that even in the darkest corners of manipulation, you can always find your way out?
Overgeneralization. What if one mistake defined everything you are? Not the big things, not the life-altering ones. Just a moment, a single decision, a bad day. The kind of thing that happens to everyone, but somehow when it's you, it becomes the whole story. You snap at someone, you show up late, you forget something important, and in that one instant, a quiet sentence forms in someone else's mind. They're always like that. That's how it starts. A simple thought. But it doesn't stay simple. It grows, spreads, becomes the lens through which every other moment is filtered. Welcome to overgeneralization, one of the darkest, quietest tricks of manipulation, a trick so subtle, so invisible, you often don't even notice it until your world starts to shrink. Let's pause here. Think about a time when someone judged you too quickly, and maybe they saw one version of you, your worst version, and decided that's all you were. And no matter how much you try to explain, or improve or change, they never let you grow past that snapshot. That one moment became your whole identity. That's overgeneralization. It's when a single event becomes the blueprint for everything else. When one crack in the glass is mistaken for the whole window being broken. It sounds harmless, but it's not, because it doesn't just trap you. It rewrites your story in someone else's handwriting. Imagine this: you fail a test, just one, and suddenly, in your own mind you whisper, "I'm stupid," not "I didn't study," not "it was a hard test," just "I'm stupid," full stop. You take one detail and stretch it over your entire life, like a shadow that never quite lifts. This trick isn't just something we do to ourselves. It's something people do to others, often, quietly, repeatedly. A parent sees a child cry once, and calls them dramatic. A boss watches you hesitate once, and calls you lazy. A friend watches you flake on one plan, and calls you unreliable. And just like that, your entire identity is sealed shut by someone else's quick judgment. It's not fair, but it works, because humans love patterns. Even when they're not real, we crave certainty, and so when someone sees one example, their mind wants to turn it into a rule. One lie, "You're always dishonest." One argument, "You're always difficult." One flaw, "You're broken." But here's the cruel twist. Overgeneralization isn't always shouted. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's whispered, just beneath the surface. A small comment, a tilted eyebrow, a shift in tone, enough to make you feel small, again and again, until you start to believe it. Because if you hear something enough times, your brain will try to make it true, even if it never was. Let's slow down. This isn't just about words, it's about control. Because when someone uses overgeneralization on you, they're doing more than judging you. They're trapping you. They're boxing you into a version of yourself that benefits them, the version they can dismiss, manipulate, or control. It's easier to ignore someone if you've already labeled them. It's easier to blame someone if you think they never change. It's easier to leave someone if you believe they'll always disappoint you. See how dangerous that is? It doesn't stop at personality. It bleeds into race, gender, culture, identity. One person does something, and suddenly,
an entire group is blamed. That's overgeneralization at scale, and history is full of it. One country attacks, now a whole people are feared. One person fails, now a whole system is dismissed. One voice speaks out, and suddenly, the entire movement is silenced. And yet the most painful version of this trick is still the personal one, because once someone overgeneralizes you, once they decide what you are, they stop seeing you. No matter what you do, you're stuck inside their version of you, a cardboard cutout, a character in a story you didn't write. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe it too. That's what overgeneralization does. It rewires your reflection. It makes you afraid to try, afraid to speak, afraid to be anything other than the worst thing you were once accused of being. But here's the truth. You are not one moment. You are not your worst day. You are not your mistakes. You are not a pattern. You are a process, a movement, a river, not a still image. And anyone who tries to reduce you to a sentence, a stereotype, a single word, they are manipulating you. They may not even know they're doing it. That's the trick of it. It's built into our language, our thinking, our systems. But once you see it, you can start to undo it. So how do you fight it? With truth, with nuance, with softness toward yourself and others. Start by noticing the words always, never, everyone, no one, every time, all the time. These words are red flags, warnings, signs that someone is turning a moment into a rule. Push back, ask always, really every time, or just this time. You don't have to argue, just question, because questioning is what breaks the spell. And when it comes from within, when you catch yourself saying, I always mess this up, or I'm never good enough, pause, breathe, then say, that happened once. That doesn't mean it will always happen. You're not lying to yourself. You're reminding yourself of the bigger picture, because the truth is bigger, messier, and far more forgiving than the rules that overgeneralization would trap you in. Let's come back. Close your eyes for a second, if you'd like. Picture yourself, your full self, not just as you are now, but as everything you've been, and everything you're becoming. All the kindness, all the growth, all the times you showed up when no one saw, all the times you tried again. That's you, not just the slip-ups, not just the flaws. You are not a sentence someone once threw at you. You are not a label. You are a story, still unfolding, still learning, still alive. And no trick, no manipulation, no single moment gets to define that. So the next time someone tries to flatten you into something small, something simple, something fixed, remember this. You are not their version of you. You are not always. You are not never. You are this moment, and this moment is full of possibility. And maybe, just maybe, that's all you ever needed to know.
Cherry-picking data. What if truth isn't truth at all? Not because it doesn't exist, but because someone carefully chose which pieces you're allowed to see. You're scrolling online, reading a thread, watching a documentary, maybe even listening to a friend explain something they're passionate about, and it sounds convincing. The facts are lined up, the story is tight, everything seems to make sense, but something doesn't sit right. It's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying. This is cherry-picking, not the fruit, the tactic, one of the quietest and most common forms of manipulation. It doesn't shout, it doesn't twist, it doesn't even lie, not directly. Instead, it selects, it sorts through a pile of information, throws out anything that doesn't help the narrative, and only shows you what supports the point being made. Simple, subtle, and deeply effective, because when you only see half the puzzle, the picture seems complete, but it's not. Let's stay here for a bit, not to judge, not to accuse, just to understand. Imagine you're in a courtroom, two lawyers, same case, same evidence pool, but one lawyer only presents the witnesses who help their side, leaves out the rest, leaves out the messy parts, the contradictions, the shades of gray. That's cherry picking. It's not what they show you,
It's what they leave behind, and when done well, it doesn't feel like a trick. It feels like the truth. It starts slowly, a graph that doesn't show the full timeline, a quote taken out of context, a statistic with no mention of its source, an article that cites 3 studies, but ignores the 5 that say the opposite. You wouldn't know. You weren't there for the research. You didn't see the unchosen data. All you see is the version they want you to believe. And it works, because our brains like clean stories. We like patterns. We want cause and effect, black and white, right and wrong. Cherry picking gives us that. At a cost. The cost is nuance, complexity, the full truth. Let's go deeper. Cherry picking isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's unconscious. People don't mean to manipulate. They just want to be right. So they reach for the facts that support their view and quietly ignore the rest. But sometimes it's intentional, weaponized. A company shows you 5-star reviews but hides the angry ones. A politician highlights one good month in the economy and skips the rest of the year. A friend tells you one part of the story, the part where they were wronged, but forgets to mention what they did first. It's not lying, but it's not honesty either. It's selective truth, and that makes it powerful. You see, facts on their own don't shape opinions. Framed facts do. The way information is arranged, timed, and repeated, that's what changes minds. Cherry picking is like a magician's sleight of hand. One hand shows you something real, the other hides what matters, and by the time you realize what's missing, the trick is done. You've believed it. So how do you notice it? How do you spot the trick while it's happening? The answer is simple, but not easy. Ask what's missing. Every time you hear a strong argument, a bold claim, a confident explanation, pause, gently ask, is there another side to this? What would this look like if we zoomed out? Is there data that contradicts this story? You don't have to reject what you're being told, just balance it. Because cherry picking doesn't work if you're curious, if you're patient, if you know that truth often lives in the middle, not at the edges. But most of the time we're not patient. We're tired. We're scrolling. We want quick answers, and cherry picking gives us that, wrapped in graphs, numbers, and confident voices. It feels like certainty, but it's not. It's a version of reality, curated and cropped, and when repeated enough, it becomes the only version people remember. Let's go back to that courtroom. Imagine the jury only hears half the evidence. The rest is locked in a drawer. How fair is the verdict? How honest is the conclusion? Now zoom out. That courtroom is your mind, and every day people are lining up to present their cases about politics, products, people and problems, and some of them are cherry picking, not to help you, but to win. Because cherry picking isn't just about sharing facts, it's about controlling what you believe those facts mean. And when you control the narrative, you control the mind. Scary, right? But also empowering, because now you know to look closer, to pause before agreeing, to dig when something feels too smooth, too perfect, too one-sided. You know that manipulation isn't always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's quiet, elegant, dressed in data, and now you've seen it. The shape of the trick, the shadow of the missing pieces. So the next time someone shows you a study, a quote, a graph, ask, is that the full story? You don't need to fight. You don't need to argue. Just wonder. Just explore. Because truth isn't afraid of questions. Only manipulation is. And cherry picking, it only works if you don't notice the empty bowl beneath the shiny fruit. So notice, ask, look again, and maybe, just maybe, you'll catch the magician's hand before the illusion sets in. Because that's how manipulation loses its power, not through anger, but through awareness. And isn't that kind of beautiful?
Whataboutism. What if every argument you've ever lost wasn't really about what you thought? There's a trick, subtle and slippery. You've heard it before, maybe even used it without knowing. It doesn't shout. It doesn't attack.
It deflects, quietly, casually. It leans to the side and points to something else. You say, "This thing is wrong," and it says, "But what about that?" That's whataboutism. It's not a glitch in thinking, it's more like a shadow, something that follows arguments just out of view until the moment it steps into the spotlight. And when it does, it doesn't answer the question, it doesn't deny or explain, it just changes the subject, not with a new topic, but with a comparison, a redirection, a finger pointed sideways. Let's say someone's caught doing something wrong, lying, cheating, hurting, and when they're called out, they don't deny it. They say, "What about you? What about the time you did this? What about all the other people who've done worse?" It sounds like they're participating, like they're engaging with the issue, but they're not. They're shifting the lens. They're putting the heat somewhere else, anywhere but where it belongs. And just like that, the spotlight moves. That's the trick. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't defend anything. It just distracts. And sometimes, that's enough. Whataboutism is simple, childlike, even, like two kids arguing. "You broke the vase." "Yeah, but she hit me yesterday." And suddenly, the room isn't talking about the vase anymore. But as childish as it sounds, it works. It shows up in politics, relationships, social media, even self-talk. It's a way to dodge the truth without outright lying. A shield made not of facts, but comparisons. The power of whataboutism doesn't come from what it says, it comes from what it avoids. Because when you say, "What about," you're no longer looking at the thing that started the conversation. You're looking anywhere else, anywhere but here. Let's slow that down. Imagine a conversation like a spotlight on a stage. Someone steps into that light and says, "Here's the problem." Whataboutism doesn't argue with the light. It doesn't dim it. It just walks across the stage and flips on a new one, shining it on something else, and the audience follows. That's why it's so dangerous, because it doesn't feel like evasion. It feels like balance, fairness, justice. But really, it's a form of manipulation, a way of saying, "I shouldn't be held accountable unless everyone else is too," which sounds fair, but isn't. Because justice isn't about comparison, it's about responsibility. Truth stands on its own. You don't need to be perfect to point out that something is wrong. You don't need a clean record to care. But whataboutism tells you otherwise. It says, "You have no right to speak. You've done wrong too. So you don't get to call anything out." And when that idea seeps in, silence follows. That's the darkest part of this trick. It silences, not just others, but ourselves. It tells you to stay quiet, unless you're spotless. It tells you that accountability is only valid if it's universal, and since it never is, nothing changes. But let's go deeper. Whataboutism doesn't always come from others. Sometimes, it comes from inside. That voice in your head, when you feel the tug of guilt or regret, and instead of facing it, you say, "Well, at least I'm not as bad as them. Others have done worse. Why should I feel bad when the world is full of bigger problems?" That's internal whataboutism. It's your mind reaching for comfort instead of clarity. Because facing our faults is hard. Staying in the heat of the truth is hard. And so we shift, not to grow, but to escape. It's a clever trick, one the brain pulls without asking, one we see mirrored in public discourse every day. A politician is questioned, and they respond, "What about the last administration?" A company is caught polluting, and they say, "But our competitors are worse." A partner forgets a promise, and their answer is, "Well, remember the time you messed up." And with each "what about," the original point fades, not because it's wrong, but because it's inconvenient. And slowly, the truth becomes slippery. Whataboutism thrives in noise. in distraction, in comparison. But the truth sits still. It doesn't need a spotlight. It is the spotlight. So how do we see through this trick? The first step is noticing it. When someone answers a concern by pointing elsewhere, pause. Don't follow the finger. Stay with the question. You can care about more than one thing. You can call out wrong without solving the whole world. And you can speak up, even if you're imperfect. The second step is reflection. Ask why this deflection. What fear is being covered up? What truth is too uncomfortable to face? Because most manipulation doesn't come from power. It comes from fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing control. Fear of being seen. But growth lives just beyond that fear. And finally, compassion. Not for the trick, but for the person using it. Because whataboutism is often a defense. A shield held by someone who's not ready for the weight of truth. And sometimes, we're that person. So be patient with others, with yourself. But be firm. Hold the line. Keep the light where it needs to be. Because the moment we stop letting the subject change, the truth gets a chance to speak. And when truth speaks, change follows. So the next time someone says, "What about?" take a breath and say, "That may be true, but we're talking about this." Bring the light back. Don't chase shadows.